Today, I'm going to share 100 things I wish I knew sooner in competitive Fortnite. If I could talk to myself before I started playing, these are the exact things I would say that would undeniably make me a much better player. And also someone who improves way faster than the average player. So hopefully you find this insanely long video valuable. The first thing I wish I knew sooner is that if you want to become incredibly good, you need to become genuinely frustrated when you get eliminated in a round. Now, this may sound quite weird, but if we're completely calm when going down in a fight, our brain won't naturally understand that we made a mistake that needs to get fixed. This is also one of the reasons why creative can often be very ineffective in the context of improving your individual skill, because most people don't really care when they go down. So it becomes kind of a brainless way of just playing the game for fun and not really getting anything in terms of improvement. Getting frustrated and instantly thinking you shouldn't have gone down to your opponent is a trait every single pro player has, and it's something you should try to adapt into your practice if you want your hours to be as effective as possible. Of course, I'm not saying slam your desk and start screaming when losing a fight, but just sit for a bit and think, I can't believe I went down to that guy. What could I have done to win the fight instead of losing it? If I had learned this sooner, my time grinding would have been at least twice as effective, as I've always kind of been a calm guy when going down in ranked or even tournaments. But in retrospect, the times I have undoubtedly improved the fastest is when I become genuinely frustrated. For example, one of the few times I actually become super frustrated is when only needing a few points to qualify for a solo cash cup, and I end up getting eliminated. I actually become so frustrated to the point where I figure out every single mistake I made by hopping into replays instantly and looking at my mistakes. And from the fact that I care so much, I become a much better player from that single death alone. So imagine you're able to do it in everything you play. Test it out in the weeks moving forward, guys, and let me know if you're able to improve faster than before. The second thing I wish I knew sooner would have been to download Hone. Hone is a program that makes tweaking your computer and getting better FPS and less input delay incredibly easy. Let me show you how to download it and how I use it. To download Hone, go to the Epic Games launcher and search for Hone. Then simply press install. Alternatively, you can also use my link in the description below. When it's downloaded, simply open a program. When it's opened, you can head into the optimizations tab. Right here, you'll see a ton of tweaks you can make your PC more optimal for Fortnite. However, what I like to do is simply go to the left-hand side here, head down to games and click in on Fortnite. On Hone, you have two optimization presets. One light mode preset that's completely free, and one preset that is for Hone premium users. I use the premium version since, well, I'm a premium member and it gives me incredibly good results. When I use Hone, my FPS increases by around 30%, and the FPS stays way more consistent. This makes playing tournaments, ranked, customs, and of course creative a lot easier and also more fun. With the free version of Hone, you get 10 free optimizations, whereas with premium, you get unlimited optimizations and no ads. I've been using Hone for over a year now, and we partnered up to make this video together because I genuinely love the product, so consider checking it out. Moving on, we gotta talk about something that seriously changed my pace of improving forever, and that was learning about the 80-20 rule. This rule simply states that 80% of your results come from just 20% of your efforts. When I first heard this, I had to think about it for a bit and ask myself whether or not it was actually true. But then I thought about how I was practicing to become better. I was spending most of my time playing 1v1 realistics or build fights against my friends who are pretty much at the same level I am. And when I play these 1v1s, I don't really get the sense of much improvement. But the few times I hop into ranked, I body win my games from a solo cash cup, play KovaaKs, aim duels, or even get the chance to play creative against someone much better than me, I literally feel 5 times the sense of improvement I do compared to when playing against my friends. So the rule is completely true. What you need to ask yourself is, how can you make a routine that allows you to, from today moving forward, only play the things that give you a genuine sense of improvement? Because right now, chances are you're wasting 80% of your time playing things that won't really make you better at all. On a quite similar topic, something that has helped me become a ton better in game is literally not playing creative for an entire week and just playing ranked. You shouldn't even hop into a warm-up map before playing. The reason I recommend this is because a lot of you guys watching have very different ping in creative and in real games. And it's the same for me. In creative, I often have around 10 ping, whereas in real games, I always have 30. My muscle memory in regards to building and editing is, in other words, based on the 10 ping I have in creative and not the 30 ping I have in real games. Unfortunately, this causes my mechanics to be quite a bit worse in ranked and tournaments compared to creative. And the most easy way to fix this issue is to simply rewire your muscle memory over the span of a week of exclusively grinding ranked. Of course, if your goal is to become the best creative player in the world, you won't have to do this. But if you're like me and love playing tournaments, the competitive aspect of the game, and improving your placements as much as you can, doing this week of ranked only is something I highly recommend. I also quickly want to note that the last few seasons, the competition in ranked has actually been becoming better and better. The average player is much better now, compared to back just a few months ago. So you can improve a ton from ranked, as long as you feel that it's somewhat challenging. I also need to note that you need to W key everyone. Don't sit and hide. Make sure you make the time you spend on the game as effective as possible. Get in as many reps of fighting as you can in the span of a game. So let's say you take my advice now and decide to only grind ranked in the coming week. That's where the fifth thing I wish I knew sooner comes in, and that is making mental notes instantly after fights you win and when you get eliminated. Mental notes are small things you say to yourself after a fight, not out loud but just in your mind. What did you do well in that fight? Or if you got eliminated, what was the reason? Did you miss an edit? Then a small mental note can be, I need to practice my edits. Did you whiff your shot? Then fix it by grinding some aim training. Making mental notes after every single fight in ranked will make your improvements skyrocket, compared to if you're just playing on autopilot, listening to music and talking to your friends on Discord. If I had actively made mental notes throughout my entire career, I would have been much better today. So if you're not already, start doing this today. Now, another thing I learned way too late in my career was the importance of benchmarking my skill. In order to do it, all you need to do is play 20 ranked matches where you end up getting eliminated. If you win a game, you need to play 21. If you win 5 games, you need to play 25, and so forth. Every single time you go down, you want to write down why you died on either a Google Docs document, a piece of paper, or whatever. Did you go down because of bad aim? Type aim. Did you miss an edit? Type edits. Whatever you feel is the cause behind you getting eliminated, you type down. Then when you finished 20 matches, you find the single thing you died to the most. And that is what you need to practice in the following weeks. When you feel as though you've fixed your weakness, whether it be aim, building, or piece control, you play another 20 matches and type down your weaknesses. Now, maybe you only died to your previous weakness once or twice, instead of 8 or 9 times like you did last time. If that's the case, congratulations, you've just fixed one of your weaknesses. Now do the same for your new one, and over time you'll become a super well-rounded player. No question about it. I like to do this benchmark once a month, but you can do it however often you feel works best for you. Coming up next, I gotta add that I wish I focused way more on playing slowly and being accurate in regards to aiming, rather than trying to be fast building and editing wise. For some reason, I've had the really bad habit of overbuilding and over editing in fights for a long time. Especially when playing defensively, I make a ton of boxes, spin around like a fidget spinner to make those boxes, and as a result, I lose awareness of my enemy. When in reality, all I need to do is play slowly and consistently, keep track of my opponent, or at least listen to his footsteps, and then play in a calm manner where I can punish any mistake he may make. Getting rid of bad habits is incredibly difficult, but if you log on every day determined to fix them, it's only a matter of time before you actually do. Not playing slowly and focusing on accuracy, especially if you're not already a great player, is essentially practicing upon the wrong fundamentals, meaning you'll hit a skill ceiling that probably isn't anywhere near your actual goals. The next few times you hop on, think about the fact that you want to play slowly and accurately. It's a way better mindset than wanting to play fast and flashy. Of course, even with that said, it's not like you have to build a box like a snail. You can be fast, just don't spin around like a fidget spinner like I did. It doesn't do you any good, trust me. Alright, this next thing I wish I knew sooner may be the most important skill behind becoming a genuinely insane fighter, and that is the skill of tempo switching. Or, in simpler terms, knowing when to play fast and knowing when to play slow. The way in which you apply pressure, jump in boxes, face stairs or cones through walls, or play defensively when on low HP is incredibly important. Firstly, because mastering the skill of tempo switching is what makes you an unpredictable player to fight in contrast to everyone else. You see, most players have an insanely predictable level of tempo. You know exactly when they're going to open an edit on you. You know when they're going to build boxes and not do anything. And you most of the time know when they're going to double pickaxe your wall. Your job, if you want to become good, is to apply pressure and play defensively in a different way than everyone else. Now, the absolute easiest way out there to become better at tempo switching is to ask yourself, am I a better aggressive or defensive fighter? And whatever your answer is to that question, you practice notice the opposite in the weeks moving forward. If you're a demon offensive player, then force yourself to play defensively. And if you're really good at playing defense, you need to play aggressively when practicing the next 3 times you hop on. A principle I absolutely love is practicing your weaknesses so hard to the point where they become strengths. When you practice like this over the span of a few weeks, you're ready to master the art of tempo switching, being able to be a player who can go from being defensive to inhumanly aggressive in the span of a second. You see, the issue I and thousands of other players have is that we waste time switching the speed at which we fight. This is something you can't do if you want to become genuinely good. When you notice, feel, or know that you have a clear advantage, you need to be able to capitalize off that instantly, because against good players, you won't get a lot of advantages. So you must be able to eliminate them instantly when you have the chance. If you don't actively take those opportunities when practicing, you will never become a top tier player, or even close to it. So get on that today. Hop into ranked, play creative against people better than you, or play any other game mode that genuinely challenges you to the point where you lose more often than you win, because that is when you know the practice is effective. Giving yourself a solid identity is also something I wish I learned about sooner. Now, imagine you go into a solo cash cup game, and you give yourself the identity of the most unlucky player in the world, like a ton of people do. When you make a rotate in that game and you think, this rotate is hard, something stupid is definitely going to happen since I'm the most unlucky player. Well, let me tell you something. Subconsciously, by having that mentality, you up the chances of something bad happening by a substantial margin. However, if you're the very same player, but with the identity of a smart player, meaning you genuinely believe you're very smart, you'll actively be able to make smarter rotates and do better. The same rules apply for trios. If you and your mates are a trio known in your community as good fighters, your chances of doing good in fights, given your confidence, will be way higher, compared to if your friend group calls all of you terrible fighters. So what I wish I did sooner was having an objective look at my gameplay and ask, what am I good at? And take that and give myself the identity of that kind of player. And at the very least, you should, after watching this video, eliminate any identity you or anyone you know has given you that has a negative impact on your performance. Whether that be you saying you're the most unlucky player, or that your friends are calling you a terrible fighter, or anything else that negatively impacts you and how you perform. This makes a bigger difference than you may think. As the 10th thing I wish I knew sooner, I have not expecting anyone else to carry. Back in the day when I played with a guy called Blade, I used to go into every tournament, knowing that he would carry. And trust me guys, he did. However, because of how I thought, I never even gave myself the chance to be the carry. This ended with me improving slower and getting worse results compared to if I genuinely thought that I would be the carry in every tournament we played. Now, this example is quite unique, given that Blade was about 5 times better than me at the game, but it can be applied for everything. When you play trios and you do bad in a tourney, you shouldn't instantly look at who had the most elims and blame the teammate who had the least amount of kills. Instead of that, you should ask yourself, how didn't I perform better? This is especially true for those of you who want to go pro and are just starting out with competitive and actively playing tournaments. I know so many of you cry because you never get good teammates. And you always carry. I mean, when you are in the beginning phases, let's say under 1000 power rankings on FortniteTracker.com, if you're not carrying every single trio tournament you play, you're doing something seriously wrong. If you don't expect yourself to carry at 1k, 10k, 30k, or whatever PR, then you're never going to make it as a professional player, because people who make it always think they're way better than the players they're currently playing with. And as a result, they perform better in the tournaments they play as well. And they don't complain about that because they expect to be the carry every single time, without exception. And this is how you need to think as well, if you want to become exceptional. Another thing I wish somebody said directly to my face much earlier is that you need to know how to get in boxes so that you can finish fights quickly. One of the main reasons behind why a ton of players will never make it in Fortnite is because they have the bad habit of never jumping in boxes to finish fights quickly. If you fight any half-decent player, it's going to be incredibly hard to eliminate him unless you either jump in when you have an advantage or full piece him by having unpredictable movement, builds, and edits. When playing solo ranked, for instance, you should go into every fight thinking, how can I win this fight as quickly as possible? And a lot of the time, the way you do that is just getting right into your opponent's box as soon as you have an advantage. Of course, when jumping in, you can't be too predictable. Apply a lot of pressure, and then when he least expects you to hop in, you get right in and finish the fight. This is the right way way to practice fighting in 2025. People are getting so good at building and editing that this is the way to become better than the competition. The best way by far I've found to practice exploiting into boxes is on Raiders Mechanics Training V5 creative map. I'll of course drop a code to this map in the description below. Here you can practice running wall exploits, stair exploits, exploits from above, or anything else you can imagine. The most essential exploits by far to learn though is the running wall exploit and the stair over the head exploit. If you can do these with close to 100% success rate, you're going to be a dangerous fighter. My favorite exploit by far is the running wall exploit. If you time this right, a lot of people don't see it coming, and you'll find that fights become a lot easier as a result of mastering this exploit. Something I'm a bit embarrassed to admit is that I spent an extreme amount of time learning to read footsteps in fights and endgames. You see, now that the competitive mode is trios, learning to read footsteps is going to make both your fights and endgames a ton easier. If you don't already use the setting called visualize sound effects, or if you haven't actively thought about actually using the footsteps in trio fights especially, then get on that the next time you play a trio tournament, trio ranked, or even just 3v3s in creative. Because the beauty of visualize sound effects and reading footsteps in fights is that they are 99% safe to trust. Sometimes you do get fake footsteps, but that has never happened to me in a fight. It just happens when I'm running around the map in mid-games, very rarely though. Trusting audio cues or what you see in trio fights can be very difficult, because often you'll see one or two opponents, but lack complete awareness over the third guy. And then you might hesitate to make an amazing play, and because of that, you lose the fight you're in. But being able to read footsteps at an okay level will eliminate all of that lack of awareness. You can have full trust in a place you want to make, just because you use visualize sound effects. And the day I actually just started using it in fights, I almost instantly became way better as a fighter in 3v3s especially. Another thing I use footsteps for all the time is rotations in solo endgames. Now, this season we're in right now, the Star Wars one, has no solo cash cups at the time of me recording this. However, I still wish somebody had told me this earlier, because before a moving zone pops, sometimes you'll see like 13 steps to your right and maybe one step to the left. And when you see that, it's obvious that you want to rotate to the left. But for some reason, I just didn't actively use this for the longest time. But now that I've gotten close to mastering it, I've become much better as a player. Talking about tournaments, the next thing I want to put you guys on is queuing into your first game in tournaments at least 5 minutes after the tournament has started. What a lot of people don't know is that in tournaments, there's something called hidden elo. This means that if you are someone who has played a lot and is at a somewhat high level, you'll get matched up against other players who are pretty good at the game, although you both have 0 points in the tournament. Whereas if you wait 5 minutes, the hidden elo disappears, and you'll get a way easier first game, meaning it'll be easier to drop high elims and get the win. I'm not entirely sure what determines what your elo is in your first game, whether it be ranked, previously played tournaments, account level, or what it is. All I know is that it's a very well kept secret in the competitive community. I late start every single tournament with at least 5 minutes, and ever since I learned this, the first game has gotten very noticeably easier. Try it out for your next few tournaments and see for yourself. Tension management when aiming is another thing that has made the game so much easier for me. Tension management is, simply put it, how much tension you put on your mouse, specifically when aiming. What I found out way too late is that when tracking, my aim is shaky and terrible when I have a lot of tension on my mouse. Whereas if I don't tense my hand at all when tracking, or in simpler terms, go for a super light mouse grip, my tracking is smooth and consistent. What I strongly recommend when it comes to tension management is to hop into Raiders Aim Duel map. I'll also leave the code to this map in the description below. Play 3 to 4 rounds where you aim like you normally would. I'd go for 3 to 4 rounds, firstly with a shotgun swap mode, and then 3 to 4 rounds with an SMG or an AR. After the rounds are over, think about what kind of tension you put on your mouse. Do you hold your mouse hard, light, or somewhere in between? Then force yourself to play with very low tension for 3 to 4 rounds, with both shotguns and SMGs. See if it feels easier or more consistent to aim. If it does, chances are you should practice a low tension when playing ranked and tournaments as well. I'd also go for 3 to 4 rounds with shotguns and SMGs, where you tense your hand a lot when aiming. Some people have insane aim when tensing, but knowing whether or not you're one of them is crucial. Had I learned about tension management and aiming earlier, my aim throughout my career would have probably been 30% better, and I'm not even joking. I also need to note that this is very often the reason people have insane aim in creative, but not in real games and tournaments. In creative, they're super relaxed than have a light grip on their mouse. But in real game scenarios like tournaments, they tense their hand quite a lot, often without even realizing, meaning their aim is worse. I need you to think about this for a bit, because when I learned about this, it changed a lot for me. Another thing that seriously changed a lot for me was when I learned the power of VOD reviewing both POVs in ranked. VOD reviewing fights in ranked is seriously underrated, and I have no idea why more people don't do it. The way I go about it is usually as follows. When I'm playing aggressively, I look at my POV and I ask a few questions. The first question is, what kind of angles am I taking? And then I look if I make any mechanical mistakes. Making mechanical mistakes should not happen. The mechanics you use in fights shouldn't be so complicated to the point where you often mess up builds and edits. I also look at how effectively I'm applying pressure. How am I shooting, moving, pickaxe swinging, etc. Then the interesting part comes. I watch both fights I win and lose. I watch how my opponent played against me playing aggressively. And the first question I genuinely always ask myself is, was I super annoying to fight from his POV? If I wasn't, then I did something seriously wrong and I need to figure out how I can be an annoying player to fight against. My goal when playing aggressively is to not let him breathe and force out a mistake from him. That can be taking a bad angle, letting me take his wall, face a cone in his box, or whatever. You can also do the same strategy when playing defensively. First, watch yourself. Look if you missed any opportunities to punish your opponent. And then you want to watch him and ask, are you predictable? Or are you making annoyingly good plays? VODing fights in ranked is something nearly nobody does. And of course, if you're so good to the point where you win almost every single ranked game you play, this probably won't be effective practice for you. However, for the vast majority of you, doing this will yield an immense amount of improvement over the coming weeks. So give it a go. And it's kind of funny how we're talking about doing things most players aren't, because the 17th thing I wish I knew sooner is how if you want unique results, you need to practice in a unique way. I know I have a lot of people watching my channel who want to go pro, make money from tournaments, and prove themselves as some of the best players in the world. You know how you'll never accomplish that? Hopping into creative against the same friend you've played against for 2 months. The guy you know exactly how plays the game, all his strengths and weaknesses. Most people spend hours a day playing a friend like this. It's a complete waste of time. You'd be 50 times better off just playing ranked. Some people who think they're good still play ranked for rank. They won't WK everyone they see because they want to hit Unreal. If you want to become good and don't always just WK absolutely everyone, then you need to seriously change your way of thinking and practicing. And I already know I'll get questions about reload. Reload is low tier fighting practice, but it can be good to practice aim. The critical thing I want to share here is that you need to find a way you can practice that gives you an advantage over everyone else. Advantages like this can be VOD reviewing ranked games, playing players in creative who beats you every single day, watching and adapting pro players' ways of fighting, making set strategies in solo or trio tournaments, aim training, playing more than everyone else, paying for coaching. I mean, the list is really endless. Your job, if you want to become someone phenomenal, is to find out exactly how you can practice in a way nobody else can. Because by doing that, you'll also get results unlike anyone else. The 18th thing I wish I knew sooner is that finishing outside tasks before grinding will make your practice way more effective. A lot of the time in the past, I would hop in a game and instantly play even though I knew I had to do something that was more important. Homework, cleaning the bathroom because I promised my parents I would do so, or mowing the lawn. But then I got on to grind, and my focus was terrible, because when I was playing, in the back of my mind, I knew I should be doing something else. And for that reason, I felt bad instead of excited and locked in when I practiced. I actually learned this tip from a guide I watched a few years back, and truthfully, it has been a total game changer in regards to how much I've been able to improve when playing. Being able to channel all your focus into your goal instead of splitting it between grinding the game and a more important task you know you should be doing will help you reach your goals faster than you can imagine. On the topic of things that will help you reach your goals faster than you can imagine, I wish I knew the truth behind finding an actual good friend group. Now, I'm gonna tell you the actual truth behind what you need. And although I for years thought it was being in a friend group with pros, what I've found is that that is only true if they are genuinely passionate about the game, grinding and improving. The reason I word myself this way is because some players, maybe you at one point, get into friend groups with pro players and think they'll magically become tier 1s. They adapt the same habits. But since that friend group of pro players don't really grind hard anymore, the new guy could be you, in the friend group never becomes any good at all. You see, when you're not consistently getting good tournament results, you don't have the luxury of the same lazy habits as a lot of these tier 1s. What I've found in our Norwegian friend group, where players like iDrop, who's top 30 in EU, and Bloodx, arguably the best Fortnite coach this game has ever seen, hangs out, is that if you're open and honest about actually wanting to become great, and you're okay with saying that you're willing to do anything it takes to get there, people like iDrop and Bloodx will gladly help you out. But unfortunately nowadays, new players want to act like they don't grind at all. It's cool to post a tweet where you perform in a tournament and state that you haven't played for 3 months, or I qualified to this tourney without any practice. For some reason, that's more respected than someone tweeting that they qualified to an event that they worked insanely hard for. My message here is that if you want to be the nonchalant, pretend to not be grinding but playing 8 hours a day anyway kind of guy, you won't get any help on your way to making it, and that will make the journey 20 times harder. If you can't find a friend group with already established players, you need to find people with the same goals you have. If your goal is to go pro, find a friend group of others who are genuinely excited to go pro. You do not want to be in a friend group with hobby gamers if you're serious about improving every single day. Find people who can give and take criticism, who are obsessed with improving, and you'll have an insane advantage over the vast majority of others playing the game, just because of your circle of friends. Alright, now we're already at the 20th thing I wish I knew sooner, and that is only pressing your fire button when you're on the opponent with the AR. Now, this sounds super obvious at long range, and it is, but at close range, when you fire a shotgun shot and then swap to your AR or SMG, do you just shoot instantly, or do you actually have that 1 millisecond trigger discipline to wait to shoot until your crosshair is on the enemy? You see, tracking opponents in Fortnite is very easy if you land the first shot, but if your first shot misses, there are times where you whiff everything, or at least more bullets than you should. This super tiny mindset shift to pressing your fire button just 1 millisecond later when you see that the crosshair is on enemy made my close range AR and SMG duels way more successful, and I strongly recommend you try to adapt the same way of thinking. Next up, something I learned way too late is that a genuinely great play can go badly. Let me explain. When I grinded in my first few years of competitive Fortnite, I would instantly think, that was such a bad play when I died, no matter what. Now, the reason you can't think like this is because you'll be limiting your own playbook so incredibly much. Let me give you an easy example. Let's say you're in your final game of a solo cash cup. You have 200 health but no more healing at all. You have 100 mats and you see that 2 players are fighting right next to you. Both of them gets cracked and eventually one guy wins the fight. Because you're scuffed and you see this, you think, I need to jump in. And you do. But when you jump in, you get maxed and sent back to the lobby. What I used to think when this happened was, why am I going for that? That was such a bad play. But objectively speaking, in that hypothetical scenario that we've all been in, that exact play was probably the best thing you could have gone for in that entire game. Of course, you could have played your early and mid game better to the point where you had shields and mats, but right then and there, even when dying, it's crucial to understand that that was the right play to make. 9 out of 10 times, you'll win that duel and not get maxed. When I understood this simple principle, my practice became even more effective. One of the most important things I ever learned about competing in Fortnite is that you need to always try your absolute best in tournaments, even if you have a terrible start. Tournaments are where you'll see the most amount of improvement, hands down. The quality of the practice is incredibly high since everyone is trying super hard to get a good placement, and therefore you'll get punished for your mistakes to a way higher degree than in, for example, ranked or creative. In addition, when you have bad starts in tourneys, your elo will be very low, meaning you'll face bad players after a few 0-point games. When this happens, it will be easier to win and get eliminations, and some of my best placements have come from simply having a good mentality and comebacking the last 3 games of a 10-game tournament. Something else regarding tournaments that I learned way too late is that W-keying in tournaments is the best practice you'll ever get. This comes from what I just talked about. People are trying their hearts out not to die and play as good as possible. So the quality of the fights you'll get in tourneys and the amount of improvement you'll extract from those fights will be substantially more than anything else you play. I usually W-key in tournaments like skin cups, performance evaluation cups, and other cups that I either don't really care all that much about, or that I simply can't qualify to or even stand a chance of making money in. What's important when you're W-keying in tourneys is that you always make mental notes after every fight, like we talked talked about earlier. When you win a fight, ask yourself, what was good? What made you win? And when you lose, simply ask, what went wrong? And how could I have won that fight? If you want to become as good as humanly possible, the 24th thing I wish I knew sooner would have been to just consume a lot of educational Fortnite content. There are so many great minds on competitive Fortnite YouTube. You have the likes of Destiny Jesus, Resub, Psychoma, and many more who makes videos that can help you become a better player. What I like to do is when I eat, I just turn on a video that's both entertaining and can get me closer to my goals in regards to competitive Fortnite. These competitive Fortnite creators break down great plays to understandable short videos, and from that you can adapt new playstyles, tricks, and strategies. So if you're serious about reaching your true potential, this is something I can't recommend enough. Now, the 25th thing I wish I knew sooner would have been how the hitboxes actually work in Fortnite. A while back, I made an aiming video where I also talked about the hitboxes. But since chances are you haven't seen that video, let me explain what I'm talking about. For the longest time when spraying with SMGs on close range or ARs on long range, I would try to exclusively track my opponent's head to deal as much damage as possible. However, what I didn't understand was that thanks to Bloom and how the hitboxes work in Fortnite, this is the wrong way to go about spraying. If you don't know what Bloom is, by the way, it's essentially that the bullets you shoot out can land randomly within your crosshair. They're not 100% accurate in the middle like some may think. This means that even if you track an opponent's head 100% perfectly, some bullets can still miss thanks to this aspect of the game. That is why you're much better off just always aiming at the chest. This limits any inconsistency in your aim and will help you hit hard sprays more often. Of course, when using the shotgun, you want to go for headshots exclusively unless the opponent is low HP. Moving on to something totally different, I have an advanced tip to those of you who want to go pro, and that is VOD reviewing your off-spawn looting. This may sound quite intense, but it's something nearly nobody does. Although it's one of the things that will help limit randomness the most. You see, if you loot your off-spawn spot and always forget 2 or 3 floor spawns and a chest, you're not giving yourself the best odds of succeeding in your tournament games. The way I VOD review my looting is simply hopping into a tournament replay and using drone free to scout for floor spawns, ammo boxes, and chests I may not have picked up or opened. This is especially important in seasons with OP items like pads or anything else in that category, as having these OP items will make your games tremendously much easier. On the topic of tournaments, another thing I learned way too late is to use momentum. You know how in some tournament games you feel unstoppable after getting 4, 5, or 6 elims? Well, that right there is momentum doing its job. In some games, momentum can seriously be the difference maker between a 30th place and a win. So what I like to do is take fights early on in important games to build up momentum and confidence. This is a huge contrast to what most players do, in that they play extremely safe and unconfident. You can also use momentum after a win in trios, for example, and tell your teammates, let's use that momentum of our last game. We played that perfectly. If you figure out a way of using momentum that fits your way of thinking and playing, you'll start seeing way better tournament results. Another exceptionally important thing you need to do if you want to go pro is get into the right practice discords. This right here is not even a negotiable. If you want to become good, this is a must. In Europe, the Discord you want to aim to get into is Noble247. This Discord is a practice squad for players within the top 1000 of the European power rankings leaderboards, and also where you can scrim against the best of the best on a day-to-day basis. In NA, you have vital scrims. Just like for Noble247, you need to have a good placement on a power rankings leaderboard to play against good players in this Discord. This is also why it's crucial that you take every tournament seriously that you play, so that you can climb the PR leaderboards and get into better and better practice. On the way to getting into Noble247 in Europe, you also have lower tier discords you can get into like NobleDiv 3 or 2, where you practice against slightly worse players, but this is still good to develop your skill. So in short, if you want to go pro, your focus needs to be on getting into these top tier practice squads. It's one of the most important things behind making it. Being calm is what we're going to be talking about next, and this one sounds like a no-brainer. Of course, you won't become a top tier player if you stress and get nervous all the time, but practicing being calm calm with intention, even when playing ranked, is so important to make your practice as effective as possible. A lot of people, when they get tagged low, start stressing, even in creative. But if you do that, you're practicing upon the wrong fundamentals, building bad habits, and destroying your muscle memory. When you get tagged low, you need to actively focus on being completely calm and figuring out what kind of plays you can and cannot go for. Just saying to yourself, I need to be calm when these scenarios happen, helps a lot. So try it out in your games moving forward. As the 30th thing, I am playing on 1600 DPI. The reason I include this in the video is because 1600 DPI compared to 400 specifically is a bit smoother when it comes to tracking. And a lot of people will think this is false, but I challenge you to try it out if you have any doubts about what I'm saying here. Hop into an aim duel with an SMG, first on 400 DPI and then on 1600 DPI. What you'll find is that it almost feels like your sense on 400 DPI is skipping a few pixels when tracking, whereas 1600 DPI is buttery smooth. This right here helped me become a little bit more smooth and consistent of a player. Now it's time we talk about a few things you can do to get way less input delay when playing. Firstly, let's click our Windows button and search for the NVIDIA app. Then we want to head into drivers and make sure our drivers are up to date. Of course, if you don't have a NVIDIA graphics card, you want to head into the AMD software app. One thing I gotta note though is that a lot of people don't like updating their drivers, as unfortunately the newest drivers aren't always the best for the lowest possible input delay. So keep that in mind when updating. The way I go about it is simply updating my drivers every once in a while, and if it feels bad, I simply just go back and reinstall another slightly older driver. It isn't harder than that. However, the driver I'm on right now, the newest one out, has been very good for me. Now that you have your drivers updated, we can go ahead and apply the best NVIDIA control panel settings. This right here is actually something that should help your input delay quite a lot. To get into the NVIDIA control panel, go down to the arrow on the bottom right of your screen, right click on the NVIDIA symbol and click in on NVIDIA control panel. When it's opened up, firstly head into adjust image settings with preview and make sure that use the advanced 3D image settings is applied. Then click on take me there. On the first setting called image sharpening, I have it set to off. However, if you have a really bad PC, I strongly recommend using the setting and playing on a lower resolution than native. For example, playing on 1280 x 720. What this setting does is making lower resolutions look way better, and that comes with a pretty good performance increase. Making our way down here, ambient occlusion should be set to performance. Anisotropic filtering application controlled. These four anti-aliasing settings should be set to off, on, application controlled, and off. Background application, max frame rate, also set to off. CUDA GPUs set to all. CUDA system fallback policy on driver default. And a big one here, low latency mode set to ultra. Max frame rate set to off. Monitor technology on fixed refresh. Multi-frame sampled AA set to off. OpenGL CDI compatibility set to prefer performance. OpenGL rendering CPU set to your GPU. Power management mode on prefer maximum performance. Preferred refresh rate set to highest available. Shader cache size set to driver default. These four texture filtering settings should be set to on, allow, high performance, and on. Then threaded optimization set to auto. Triple buffering and vertical sync set to off. Then one, off, and auto on these three last ones. Then click apply. Then you want to go to the left hand side here and go to physics settings and make sure your processor is set to your GPU, and once again hit apply. Something a lot of people forget about is downloading chipset drivers. These drivers are essentially a translator between your hardware, think CPU, SSD, RAM, etc., and your operating system. And when these drivers are fully updated, the translator will at times work better, meaning increased performance, compared to if you've never updated your chipset drivers. To update your chipset drivers, head into Google and search for chipset drivers. When you've done that, you'll see two links, one for Intel chipset drivers and one for AMD. In my case, I have a Intel-oriented motherboard, so I'll click in on Intel. If you have an AMD-oriented motherboard, click on AMD. When you're on this website, go down to where it says Download Drivers and Software. Then click on Get Started. And most of you will have to click in on where it says Download Now. But since I already have the Intel driver and support assistant downloaded, I won't have to do that. When you get to this page, simply download your chipset drivers. You can also download anything else you see that you feel as though will help you out. To make things a little bit more interesting, I need to share one tip right now regarding what you can do outside of the game to instantly become much better. And that is to enable something called XMP for Intel-oriented motherboards or DOCP for AMD-oriented motherboards. XMP is a setting that allows your RAM to run at its actual full speed. It's in 95 out of 100 scenarios totally safe to turn on, although it is classified as an overclock, with a few exceptions for older PCs. However, if you have a medium to high range PC from the last few years, XMP is a setting that you absolutely must have on. It will make your FPS a ton better, your input delay will feel non-existent, and enabling the setting will essentially make you a few percentage points better instantly. To turn it on, we first want to hit our Windows button and R at the same time. Type in msinfo32 and hit enter. When the window opens up, you want to make your way down to baseboard manufacturer. Right here, as you can see, it says Asus for me. For you, it might say something along the lines of Microstar International, which is the full name for the brand MSI. You might have a Gigabyte motherboard, Asus like me, or it might be a totally different brand. What I recommend when you find the brand of motherboard you have is to search up on YouTube how to turn on XMP with an MSI motherboard, if you have an MSI one, and so forth. However, I will go over how to, generally speaking, turn on XMP right now. So chances are high you'll understand how to do it from my simple tutorial, although we might not have the exact same setup for our BIOS. To turn on XMP, we need to turn off our PC. Once the computer is fully shut down, we want to go ahead and turn it on again. While it boots, we want to spam click our F2 or delete buttons. It can also be buttons like F10, F12 or escape, but rarely. Most of the time while the computer boots, it will also tell you what hotkey gets you into BIOS. When you've successfully spammed your F2 or delete button whilst your computer is booting up, you'll be met with this menu that truthfully looks a bit scary, but do not worry. Although it looks scary, it is almost impossible to do something that can harm your PC accidentally. For me, turning on XMP is super easy, as on the left hand side here, it says XMP and then disabled. All I have to do is click in where it says disabled and change it to enabled. Then press F10 to save and exit. For you, turning on XMP might be done by changing your XMP profile to profile 1 instead of enabled. You might also have to access advanced mode instead of easy mode like I added on. Advanced mode is most of the time accessed by either pressing F7, double tapping F8, or tapping A. Once you find XMP and have saved and exited the BIOS, your PC will boot and your RAM will be set to full speed. This will result in incredible performance increase, and the game will be much easier to play. Lastly, I do need to note that not every computer has the ability to enable XMP. This is most of the time because of cheap motherboards, cheap RAM sticks, pre-built computers by major brands like HP, Dell, Lenovo, you name it, or it is because you play on a laptop. Almost no laptops have the option to turn on XMP. If you feel as though your game is spiking super hard after having turned on XMP, it is because of the setting. It's the only thing throughout this entire video that has the chance to do that for you. So if that's the case, follow the same procedure we talked about just seconds ago and disable it again. It won't have any negative permanent effect on your computer. Moving on, we want to cut some processes. Luckily, a YouTuber by the name Titus and his team have made an amazing program that easily limits how many processes you have running in the background. Before we run the software, let's check how many processes I have by right-clicking on the taskbar and selecting Task Manager, and then heading into Performance. As you can see, I have around 240 processes, which is a ton. So let's run Titus' software and have a look at how many processes we'll end on after that. To run the software, right-click on your Windows icon down in the bottom left and go into where it says Terminal Admin. Then type in the following command. I'll leave it down in the description below so you can copy it. Then when the command is typed out, press enter and a box like this will appear. When the box appears, make your way over to the tweaks section. Under this tab, you'll see recommended selections for desktop, laptop, and minimal. I strongly recommend to use the recommended desktop selections if you're on a desktop PC and the laptop selections if you're on a laptop. Now, you might be wondering what some of these tweaks are, like, oh no, shut up. This tweak makes it so that Windows does not pass on your data and diagnostics to Microsoft. It heavily limits your location services, and it disables things like camera on user logon, ads via Bluetooth, and a few more security-oriented settings. On all of the other settings, you can hover over each and every one to see what the tweaks you're applying exactly does. When the tweaks are applied, simply press Run Tweaks. When they're done, you'll have to restart your device for the newly added tweaks to work. What I recommend is right-clicking on your Windows icon in the bottom left, then going to Shutdown, but whilst you press Shutdown, you hold your Shift key. This ensures that your PC fully shuts down, and not just goes into idle mode. After restarting my PC, I went down to around 180 processes, which is still quite a lot, but it's about 25% less than prior to using the program, which is a very noticeable decrease. On a totally different topic, it's incredibly important that you trust what your brain is telling you to do and not what your teammates are telling you. Let me give you an example. You're left in a 1v2 clutch, and you've just tagged one of the players you're fighting 150. One of your teammates is telling you in voice chat that you should run away, get the reboots, and play it safe. However, in your mind, you feel like running away and trying to reboot will scuff your game and you'll do terrible. But you have an amazing feeling about taking a fight in the 2v1. This situation can be extremely tough. Should you listen to your teammate's call, or should you trust what your intuition is telling you? If you trust yourself and do the opposite of what your teammate is telling you and you lose the 2v1, your teammate might get super mad at you. But if you trust your teammate, you're not trusting the only player you're going to be playing 100% of your matches with. So of course, the answer here is that you absolutely must trust what your intuition or gut feeling is telling you to do. You see, improving your intuition is actually a skill in Fortnite. You could also refer to your intuition as your game sense in a way, though it's not totally the same. And the more you trust what your own mind is telling you to do, the better your intuition becomes. If you one day trust your intuition always, and the next day you exclusively listen to your teammates, your intuition will not improve, and your ability to win clutches will not improve either. Being somewhat good at clutches is crucial if you want to climb the PR leaderboards. So in short, when you're in clutches, listen to yourself. Don't be scared of not doing what your team is telling you to do. This is really important to learn and be comfortable with. On a similar note, when you're left in clutches, make sure you genuinely expect to win them. If you're in a 3v1 situation and in your mind you think it's impossible, well, let me tell you, that clutch will be impossible. However, if you're left in a 1v3 and you use all your brain power on thinking about how you can win it, chances are 100 times higher you'll actually succeed in doing so. If you want to reach far in this game, I'm talking become a top 500 player, you need to be so delusional in clutches that you get mad at yourself when losing them. This mentality right here is a massive contrast to the players who never accomplish anything, because instead of thinking about how they could have won that clutch, they instantly start blaming their teammates for dying. Moving on to another fighting tip, I need you all to understand the insane importance of the first shot in a fight. A lot of people don't think about just how important that first tag is. It sets the pace for the entire fight, and if you're someone who's able to consistently deal heavy damage at the beginning of fights, you'll succeed at a way higher level than those who can't. Some players actually like taking damage first in a fight so that they can play defensively, because they subconsciously are more confident when playing defensively compared to aggressively. This right here is a major problem a surprising amount of players have, and it's limiting your potential unfathomably. Playing aggressively has a way higher skill ceiling than playing defensively. This is due to the fact that you control the tempo of a fight, you have way more room to work with, and an absurd amount of more potential plays you can go for, compared to the player boxing up and playing defense. In the following weeks, really put your all into getting the first shot off in a fight and playing aggressively. Be a player who is hard to hit at the start of fights, and you'll over time see immense improvement. Next up, something I didn't learn the value of until way too late, we have patience. Now, in Fortnite, a lot of players are very impatient. And what that means is that if you're someone who is patient, you'll often find that your opponent makes a big mistake you can punish. The important thing here is that you go from being a patient player to someone who instantly, without hesitation, punishes said mistake. A problem a ton of players have is that they hesitate a little bit too long. This skill right here is kind of like tempo switching like we talked about in the beginning of the video. The difference is that you need to be able to spot out impatient players and wait for the mistake to be made, because very often that's something that will make fights 100 times easier. Something else that literally makes fighting and endgames much easier is having 200 health. Now, you may be thinking, well, of course, having 200 health makes fighting and endgames easier. But something that changed my consistency in tourneys forever was understanding that 200 health compared to even just 170 or 180 HP is much more forgiving. So what I'm trying to say here is that if you go into an endgame and you have 2 or 3 big pots, don't be scared to just pop one, even if it's for just 20 health. Because when someone lands in your box, enemies and you need to reactively aim on them, that 20 HP extra will very often be the difference between winning and losing that fight. This may sound obvious or like a waste of shield in 9 out of 10 scenarios, but I'm really being serious, guys. Don't be greedy on your shields in endgames. It's of course different when you're playing Surge in high elo lobbies, but in open tournaments, there's no reason not to be on 200 health in fights and endgames if you have the opportunity. Getting kills is often not directly hard, and because of that, you'll be able to get your shields back anyways. Talking about succeeding in fights and endgames, the next thing I didn't really understand the importance of back in the day was having a solid warm-up routine. Having a warm-up routine just makes you quite a lot more consistent of a player. You'll get your hands warmed up, your feel for the game will be better, and there's just no reason not to warm up before playing. Another thing that people often don't think about is that when you don't warm up, you may lose fights you wouldn't lose if you had warmed up. And because of that, you may think that a good play that you went for is bad because you lost the fight. But the truth is that that play was good. You were just not warmed up and you played very far from your potential. This will give you a flawed understanding of what you can and can't do. And because of that, you'll limit your amount of potential plays in fights and essentially just become a worse player. The 42nd thing I wish I knew sooner is kind of a similar thing. And that's making fights as easy as possible. Now, since I'm a content creator and have been since 2019, I've often found myself doing useless moves to try to look cool to make good content for my YouTube videos. However, this is a very ineffective way of practicing if your goal is becoming one of the best. Consistently making fights as easy as possible means you'll have the knowledge of plays you can and cannot go for that are replicable time and time again. Whereas if you overcomplicate things, you'll give yourself way more chances to mess up and lose the fight. When going into a fight, think about how can I make this as easy and fast as possible. If you do that every day moving forward, you'll become a very clean fighter. Another thing you need to become a clean fighter is good aim. And that's where the next thing comes in. Playing zero build realistics against other good aimers to develop a high level of aim. Now, just playing like 30 minutes of zero build realistics a day will easily put you in the top 1% of aimers. But of course, you'll have to do it for some time. I'm talking at least the next 100 days. If you're not a fan of zero build realistics, you can also do some work on Aimlabs, KovaaK, or Aimbeast. These aim trainers are also highly effective when it comes to improving your aim. However, a massive problem a ton of players have is that they download these aim trainers and think they'll become the best aimers in the world in a month of playing 30 minutes a day. That is not at all how improvement works. Aim training is something you need to do every single day for the next 6 to 12 months if you want to become an actual consistent aim demon. People heavily underestimate how fast improvement comes. How aim trainers help you out is that you more effortlessly hit shots. As long as you aim train very consistently, you'll not even have to think about anything when hitting 200s because of the work you've done in KovaaK, given that you've spent months being consistent. Next up, I gotta talk about practicing scuffed edits. You know when you're stuck really close to a wall and have to edit out? Or when you have to do a quick stare edit from an awkward angle to save your life? Well, these are scenarios where a lot of players end up getting eliminated. But if you spend a little bit of time in creative to practice these moves every time you warm up, you'll give yourself way higher odds of getting out of those awkward scenarios. So it's something I highly recommend implementing into your warm-up. You can also, when warming up, make sure that you fully understand the grid system. Now, to those of you who are a bit more advanced, mastering the grid system is something you're probably close to. If you're not sure what the grid system is, by the way, it's simply put it where you have to look to place certain builds. Most commonly, we have high cones, which is a skill every aspiring player needs to master. But luckily, also one of the simplest grid system fundamentals. You also have grid system moves like facing builds. I'm talking stairs or cones into your opponent's boxes. This is something that will often force out a mistake in your opponent when you're playing aggressively, and doing this can often win you fights. So learning it at a high level is something I definitely recommend. Alright, closing up on the halfway point to the 100 things I wish I knew sooner, we have actively not being scared to shoot back when playing defensively in fights. Now, if you're playing against people of a low caliber, you're not going to be forced to shoot back to heal. They'll be so bad at pressuring that you'll be able to pop your shields in peace. However, when you start playing good players, you'll find that it's impossible to heal, unless you deal some counter damage. So going into every defensive fight when you're low HP with the mentality that you're going to be looking for ways to deal counter damage and shooting back is essential if you want to be at the top. It doesn't really matter if it's against someone who's not that good at the game, because you still need to look for weaknesses in aggressive fighters and not be fixated on healing, because when the time comes and you meet someone genuinely good, that practice, although against a bad player, will come in handy. Talking about things coming in handy already, I also need to talk about crosshair placement. Having good crosshair placement in Fortnite is basically just consistently giving yourself easy opportunities to hit hard pump shots. Usually done through holding your crosshair at head level and doing edits where your crosshair is pretty close to the enemy's head after the edit is confirmed. Having good crosshair placement is the single skill that can make aiming in Fortnite much easier. And that's what we want when trying to become as good as we can. We want to make things easy. So think about that a little bit the next time you're playing. How can I make my shots as easy as possible after having built and edited in a fight? Another skill that will take you to the next level is sprinting side jump shots. Doing side jumps and shooting midair is one of the sickest ways to get free shots on your opponent. And if you have good movement when going for these, you'll be an incredibly unpredictable player to fight. To make this even harder to predict for your opponent, you can build out a few cones to the right, for example, and instantly after jump out to the left. Faking these builds can really come in handy, so practicing this when playing build fights is something I definitely recommend. Moving on to the final difficulty level of moves, we're going to be going over 10 moves for the expert players watching. And the first move I want to show you all is an insane double edit into diagonal piece control. Now, I'm not good enough to do this consistently, but if you're playing at a mechanical level like some pros, then this might be something for you. Begin by doing a double edit, place 2 walls like showcased in the background footage, and then edit this 4 square edit on the right wall. Then connect 2 more walls by continuing the motion you already started, and when these walls are placed, you want to quickly place 2 cones below and above you. Then finish the move off by full piecing out 1 box in front of you. Move 52 is a bit easier, but still quite unorthodox. Begin by chopping down an opponent when you see an opportunity. When it's chopped down, you shoot your shotgun shot and place either a cone or a flat where it's about to land. Then you want to back up, do 2 high walls, and stare upwards towards your wall. When you get close to the wall, you open a window and slide a cone through. Then directly after, you want to sprint out to either the left or right and do a side jump whilst you place cones and walls. Edit the wall when you've landed and finish the job. When you're getting to the expert tier, you also need to consistently be able to drop down on people's side and ultra quickly place a wall and edit a peanut butter edit. You gotta be able to do this super fast, and when you've dropped down to do the edit, you gotta comfortably do it whilst moving far to the left. In my case, as you can see, I didn't move anywhere near far enough to the left when I opened my edit. It will in most scenarios be fine to do it like I did, but if you can adapt a good peek into your muscle memory in addition to having top tier speed, then you'll literally be playing at an expert level. You see, when you build these bad habits like I have from the start, it's so much harder to relearn the muscle memory. So practice in a slow and controlled manner first. And then when you have good enough movement to the standard of having great peaks even when you don't think about it, you can start speeding up your moves. Another move that has become more and more popular among pros is doing backwards triple edits. Now, this may look a little bit weird, but that's because I'm not good at it at all. Backwards triple edits are really good because it's unpredictable. Very rarely when you see someone place a flat on a cone will they edit backwards. If you're able to do this move whilst keeping full track of the opponent and combine it with other moves like high walls and window peaks, then you can reap the benefits of this one. To do it, you simply have to place a flat and a cone, start editing the flat whilst you're making the move towards a 180, and then edit a cone to finish the 180, and place a wall and edit through it. For this next one, I want to show you a really underrated one. Start by placing 2 stairs in front of you, place a cone on the furthest one away, and hold your cone blueprint out. Then, whilst holding the blueprint, you want to edit the cone into a ramp facing the opposite direction of where you're looking. After that, you want to place 2 high walls whilst making the move of doing a 90, and then adding a stair under your feet and above your head. Then really quickly edit through this wall to the left. Full piece the cone you edited and either reset the cone or go out and make a right hand peak. Did you know that you can pickaxe flat through cones? If you just look to the left of this square looking plank, this move without looking exactly here is really hard to pull off, and for that reason it's a move that is rarely used in 2024. The reason it's really good to know how to do this consistently is because you can hit the flat above a cone once, then hit the cone once, and then trick the opponent by choosing either one of the 2 to hit on your next pickaxe swing. If you're playing on bad ping, this is especially something you gotta learn, given that taking pieces becomes way easier when applying pressure to both the flat and the cone at the same time. Move 57 is being able to triple edit into doing a reverse mongraal classic. As I said earlier in today's video, triple edits in themselves aren't good, but if you're able to place a ramp after triple editing and editing it from the bottom left to the top left, then this play can be super good. And it's something I recommend practicing, given that it's quite mechanically challenging. If you want to make it even more advanced, you can do it by starting with a twifo cone, then far edit the cone into a stair facing to the left of your character. Place a stair, 2 walls, and a cone above you. Then you want to go ahead and flip the cone and make it into a stair. Place a flat and triple edit through into placing a stair and doing the reverse mongraal classic. Another classic you gotta learn is the Martoz classic. To do the Martoz classic, you want to ramp upwards, then super quickly place a flat, edit 1 tile down to the right, place a stair above your head, full piece the enemy, and jump up and hit a max damage shot. In my opinion, hitting a shot from the Martoz classic is super difficult, but if you practice it a lot and become consistent with it, this is one of the better moves to pull off, both in creative and in real games, given just how much you'll make your opponent feel like a flopper when you jump up and hit that insane shotgun shot. The final expert tip before we move on to some more insanely valuable general tips is doing a double edit into a window edit and coning your opponent. To do this, you want to begin by placing a flat and a cone and editing them both and placing 2 walls, one in front of you and one to the right. Continue the move by simply editing a window and placing a cone. You want to move really far to the left and then make a sideways jump to the right when peeking this window and going for a shot. This move, if executed correctly, will make you a super hard target to hit, given that you're moving quickly and doing an unpredictable set of builds and edits. Next up, I want to show you some tournament moves, because most of you guys watching me play Fortnite tournaments, and if you don't, then I recommend getting into it, as it's super fun, and this can low-key be a little bit of an introduction to competitive to those of you who are yet to try it. When basing up in stacked tournament games, building a Bloodx base like showcased in the background is much better than building a set of boxes. The reason these bases are so good is because you'll have full 360-degree views around you, and if you see someone you can potentially get an elim on, you don't have to edit a cone or a wall and peek out. Doing edits from boxes is such an easy way to get either beamed or sniped. So this base is better for both awareness when it comes to shooting opponents, and I also gotta add that it's way easier to refarm when you get the overview from this base compared to your standard set of boxes. In addition, if you play practice, I'm talking customs, then forcing yourself to play these bases is so much more effective, since you're not going to just be sitting and staring at a wall when this is your base. You'll be active, look around, and if you practice correctly, you'll also pre-plan your rotates in a good manner from this box. Now, sometimes you need to build normal boxes if you're really close to other teams and forced to box up, for example. What's really important when you do this is not editing towards the lobby when you're later rotating, but rather making your way to the bottom of your base and then editing in the opposite direction of where the majority of players are based. In most tournament games, if you pre-plan a rotate, you can rotate instantly. The benefits of rotating instantly is that a lot of other players will be on their map looking at the new zone and thinking about where to rotate. When rotating instantly, your goal should be to just get in the zone. There's really no point in shooting anyone when you rotate insta, as players before the moving zones will just have 200 HP anyways. Naturally, it's a different story if you see that someone gets cracked and you're scuffed on mats and heals, but generally just try your best to go under the radar. Don't even shoot at a single guy, even if you can deal 100 damage. I also want to add that people often forget that shooting when rotating adds a lot of ice on you, especially when rotating early. You're kind of saying to the entire lobby, here am I, shoot at me. So when possible, just avoid it completely. As you can see from where I'm positioned right now, the zone will pull straight forward. The beauty of this spot here is that the left side will open up a so-called space. Playing this space in first, second, or third moving allows you to almost always be uncontested and dominate one side of the moving zone. Understanding the space and the benefits of it is something that will come in handy, especially in stacked duos games, as if you're able to claim the space and you're okay at getting refreshes, your endgames will become so much easier, and as a result, you'll end up becoming a more consistent player that gets better tournament results. When playing the space, it's also really important to know about mat switching. You need to use your wood when you're quickly moving from box to box, but then when you're at a spot in the moving zones where you need to stay for a prolonged period of time, you need to use metal. This is another simple move that will make you more consistent. Just knowing when to use wood brick, and metal. Now, on the topic of endgames, if you ever want to become really, really good, you need to be able to get your refreshes on the front side of the moving zones. Time and time again, I see such talented players get worse placements than what they deserve due to the fact that they're constantly going for refreshes on the backside. The reason the front side refreshes are so much better than backside refreshes is because the average opponent on the front side will have way more mats than the average player on the backside of the moving zones. Of course, this also usually comes with the fact that they are harder to eliminate. But if you're able to spot out when the enemy lacks awareness and you can smack on a wall on a frontside player and get that elim, then you'll go far in this game. Frontside is generally also where you want to be when going for high ground. If you're a guy looking up for height, you want to look from the front of the team up there. This is because firstly, you give yourself a better time to take it if you eventually go for it, and secondly, the frontside angles are usually your best bet at dealing initial damage that allows you to build up and fight for this position. If you're someone who likes playing high ground and feel as though you always win games from this position, there are a few things you should look for before going for it. Firstly, if the team on height isn't constantly holding frontside, they're probably bad, meaning that it will be a good bet going for it. Alternatively, if they don't actively spray a lot, they're also more than likely bad players. And finally, of course, if they use wood and you have more than 500 mats, you have an advantage when going for high ground. And when you spot these things tonight and you know within your own head that you have an advantage in going for it, you need to understand that if that move doesn't work, it was still a good play. This is something I wish somebody had told me 5 years ago, because I've been someone who has made a play in a tournament that was insanely good, but since I didn't execute it in a good enough way and ended up eliminated because of the play I went for, I thought that the play was bad, when that couldn't have been further from the truth. Very often, people know what to do, just not how to execute it in a good way. So if you, when practicing, can make good plays and practice on the execution of said plays, you'll over time become a phenomenal player. A thing people are really bad at understanding is that they need to commit when going for a play. Let's for example say you want to go for height, and you're thinking that you want to take it, but not if the team fights back. Then you'll start building up for it, and when the team starts fighting you a tiny bit, you say to your duo, let's drop down, let's not take it. If this sounds like a play you might make, then you're wasting so many mats. Just think about it. That insecurity and the lack of guts to commit cost you at least a few hundred mats. This is a bad play a ton of players make. So if you're making a play for height especially, make sure you're ready to full commit, because half committing is a massive flaw you shouldn't allow yourself to make. If you've listened to all of these height tips, you should be able to take it. But what's just as important as being able to take height is being active when you're up there. You see, in the games you have height, you really must maximize the points you're getting. And if you're like so many others, just sitting, doing absolutely nothing on height, you simply won't win your games. Being active on height is, just like we talked about earlier, the correct play to go for. So if you're running out of mats, don't pray for a miracle. Make something happen yourself. Be active, look for opportunities, and when you see them, go for them with supreme confidence. One super important move I almost forgot about is the move of taking height without connecting to the other team. A lot of players, when they go for high ground, start build fighting and connecting to the team they're versing. Now, this strategy can work if you get a lot of initial damage. However, if you don't get any initial damage, you want to make it as uncomfortable as possible for the team currently on height. And the way to do that is to go upwards so far away from the team currently up there that if they get chopped, they'll get eliminated to full damage. Don't give them the opportunity to safely land on your builds and survive. No, if they get chopped, they should get sent back to the lobby. When going up right without connecting, there are two things you must keep in mind. Firstly, staying connected to your starting point, meaning having an enforced point of where you begin taking it. And of course, in hard mats, never ever would. And secondly, you want to make sure to find a way to consistently apply pressure even though you're building up. This can be done if you, for example, have a pre-made plan with your duo that he chops whilst you go up and take their focus, or a totally different way that you find fits your playstyles. If you're not able to take high ground, which is also totally okay, you must also rotate instantly on moving zones if you have the mats. Now, earlier I talked about the importance of rotating early in mid-game, but I also want to go over the extreme importance of early rotates on moving zones, due to just how much of an advantage you'll get if you apply this into your endgame strategy. Let's say you're done playing a first moving zone, and then the second moving zone is about to show in 3 seconds. If you're telling your duo to get ready to instantly rotate, you guys can in most scenarios instantly run to the front side of the second moving. If you rotate the millisecond the second moving zone is shown, without having to place a single build. Whereas if you just wait 5 seconds, everybody else in the lobby will also be rotating, and this will cause it to to be a way higher probability that you take damage and get scuffed for the rest of the endgame. The same can pretty much be said for every single moving zone, but in third moving, it's all about claiming space, and that's why you want to rotate early, so that you can, without being contested by any other team wanting to play your layer, quickly and comfortably claim a layer. In third moving, people also begin to on average be on very low HP, so if you play patiently until this point, you can start fragging out. And then for the final moving zone, you want to again rotate as early as possible, if you have the mats of course, and remain at the front side at all times, building in metal. If you follow this strategy, I can guarantee that you'll be more consistent in your end games. One of the best moves if you're someone who enjoys playing on low ground is placing 2 cones above you on low ground in hards and claiming space ahead, always. The reason this is really good is because you'll be cutting off any potential space for teams also wanting to play the low ground. If you play a single box like is normal in first, second and third moving, you'll allow for a team to basically drop down on your side and start pressuring you. This is of course not what we want. We want to play a game that is as easy to perform in as possible, and by doing this move, you ensure that. On a more fundamental level, you also gotta know how to tarp upwards using stairs and walls. This move is really good if you need to gain elevation and have the mats to spend it to do it in a safe manner. To do it, simply place ramps below and above you, then walls on the right and left side. You want to do it in the way I'm showcasing in the background footage, with as small and precise mouse movements as possible. A lot of people make the major mistake of flicking their mouse back and forth. This will unfortunately make it very hard to maintain awareness, so limiting this shakiness to the highest possible standard should be our goal. Another move I have to add on here is not over peaking when you go for height or shots from a ramp for that matter. A lot of low tier players think how you peek out of a stair doesn't matter, but how far up your body is when shooting with your AR from a ramp is crucial when it comes to winning trades, especially when you're taking height from a low ground position. Practice upon looking at how far down on the ramp you can be and still shoot your AR, and trust me, you'll be more successful when going for those ranged duels. Alright, so I've gone over a ton of endgame moves, but I also want to go over some off-spawn moves that will greatly improve how good you are as an off-spawn player. And the first I'll be sharing is how to loot perfectly. Now, these tips are extraordinarily nerdy and very niche for the players wanting to go pro and become as close to perfect players as possible. But the most effective move to become really good at looting is first hopping into a game and making sure your replays are on, then doing your loot route, and after the game is done, you want to hop into replays, go into drone free and check if there's any chests, ammo boxes or floor spawns that you missed. Now, this is a crazy strat, but a ton of players cry about the game being RNG and getting bad loot, but don't even spend a tenth of the energy it takes to cry on doing this. When I actively grind, I always do this strat, and I often find that I miss important items like big pots, minis, and even occasionally missing a god chest. These are mistakes you can't make if you want to reach the top. So do your loot route, go into replays, and learn correctly how to loot. On the same note, I really recommend learning what to farm and not to farm at your landing spot. Some farmables give you basically no mats per hit, whilst others give you a lot of mats per hit. Finding the farmables that gives you the most amount of mats possible will make fighting off spawn even easier. And of course, you also want to make an off spawn strategy for when you're contested and not. Now, all of these things are quite boring, but doing the boring stuff is what is going to give you an advantage over everyone else playing, given that very few have the discipline to get all of these things in place. A loot and a farm route coupled with an off-spawn strat for when you're contested and not, both in solo and duos. Moving on, I gotta share how to chop fights. A lot of people have no idea how to chop, so let me give you the recipe. When you're in a build fight, you know you want to chop. You must first understand that you can't just drop down and start chopping. Not only will this give out an obvious audio cue to the player you're fighting, but he'll also understand what you're doing super quickly, even if he doesn't hear the audio. When build fighting, you want to chop the millisecond after you get a considerable tag. You must get this tag before dropping down to chop, because that will cause your enemy to box up and start playing defensively. When you've hit the tag and making your way down to the low ground, you want to look for 2 individual build pieces that can get shot out. These pieces, it doesn't have to be on the same layer, but for some reason people always look on the same layer when going for a chop. When you've identified these pieces, very quickly shoot or pickaxe them out and get ready insta when your opponent will start falling. For move 80, you gotta learn the move of slide building. The reason sliding and building is so good is because you'll be able to move at a faster pace and of course also build at a faster pace. this. When playing defensively, you also become a much harder target to keep awareness over when sliding and building. So next time you warm up, add a little bit of sliding and building into your routine. A move people are generally insanely bad at is waterfalling quickly from high ground positions. Waterfalling is when you place a few walls and a ramp to de-elevate as fast as you can. In order to do it perfectly, you need to land far out on the stair and not at the middle of it. You can also edit the stair when waterfalling to make it even quicker. But if your movement is good enough on the basic one, editing the stair really isn't necessary. And truthfully, it's a little worse waterfalling with stair edits due to how the stair becomes so low on HP. Another thing we gotta talk about is when you have the advantage when it comes to peaks and not. A lot of people don't understand this, and that can cause you to either miss out on free shots or take a lot of damage because you misunderstand a situation. The peak we're taking a look at is when you play aggressively and the opponent opens up a peanut butter on you. If you're able to spot out that this is what the enemy is going to do and make your way to the very left of your own box, hugging the left wall, you will have the biggest advantage, as you will be able to fully see the opponent, but he won't be able to see you at all. The opposite is true if you go on the wall with a peanut butter beginning to smack. So in short, if you're pickaxing a wall diagonally from an open edit and you see that your opponent is about to do a peanut butter, be ready. Hold your shotgun out and take that trade, because you'll win it 100 out of 100 times. If you play from a peanut butter and see that your opponent moves all the way to the right, don't even attempt the trade, because you lose it. When you're in a box fight against a player and you're not entirely sure where he is, an easy way to check if he's sitting in his cone is holding your cone out when going for it and seeing if there's a lock in the middle of it. If it's a lock in the middle of your crosshair, that means that he's sitting inside of the cone, holding the edit, meaning he will probably wide edit on you. If you see this and you're ready with your shotgun and bait out the fact that you're pickaxing it, you can get a free elim. Talking about losing, a way you can make your enemies lose it is by doing the following. When you get pressured, you want to build a box out. Place a stair above your head and build another box. Then on your second box, you want to pretend to edit out. But in reality, you want to go into the left, hug the wall, and flip the stair whilst hugging the wall. This will cause you to face the ramp, and you can shoot directly through it at your enemy and get a free elim. Another move you can do with stairs is when you have an opponent boxed. You can edit the stair to shoot your opponent's toes. This peak will make it impossible for your enemy to tag you. And if you do it once, reset the stair and reposition, you can do it again. It's a really strong peak, but it requires you to be prepared if your opponent tries taking your ramp. If you're playing on anything above 35 ping, this is a dangerous move, so just be wary of that. The enemies will have to be wary of you if you know this next one. Quite often, you find yourself inside of a box with an opponent, and every now and then, he'll be under your cone. If this sounds like a position you've been in before, then you gotta learn this move. Edit these 3 squares out to the left. Place a cone under you and a flat above your head. Then, whilst you run out to the left onto your cone, you grab the cone inside of your box and hold the reset until you're behind the wall. Then you reset the cone, do a quick and perfect right hand peek like we talked about earlier, and finish the fight. This one is very similar to the stair move I went over way earlier in today's video, but in my opinion, this one is a lot easier. And due to me liking keeping things simple in game, I find myself doing this so much more often than the same move with the stair edit. For move 87, I want to show you a very underrated peek, and that is editing these top 3 squares, moving all the way into the wall and crouching and then quickly jumping up, shooting your shotgun and resetting. A lot of people when making this move make the mistake of going backwards when peeking, when in reality you want to hold your W button or joystick forward when doing this one. Not only will you deal more damage with your shotgun, but you'll also be way harder to hit for a lot of damage. This next one is a super simple way to exploit in from above. When you see that a player is boxed up, you want to begin by claiming his cone. Once that is done, you want to place a stair and edit it. Continue the move by simply smacking the floor once, and then when it's one pickaxeable, you want to jump up and hit your way into the box exactly when your body hits the floor. This way, you'll be able to get in your enemy's box even if he's holding the floor. Now, this is not a play I recommend going for unless you've tagged the guy you're fighting for quite a bit of damage. But once your enemy is low, then this is a great way to just get the job done. A move that will be a great way to start a fight on the other side is placing a flat, editing it, and placing a stair into shooting your opponent. This move is a little advanced to consistently pull off, but when playing defensively, there are many times you'll get the opportunity to pull it off. It all comes down to being fast, consistent, and of course, hitting a big shot. To do it, you want to stand all the way into your wall. And when you see an opponent one layer up diagonally, you want to edit a peanut butter edit and then place a flat, edit these 3 tiles, and super quickly place a stair above. This way, your opponent won't be able to block you off. I usually don't jump when going for the shot. I simply just walk out to the right, take my shotgun shot, and reset. Understanding when to reload and not when applying pressure is up next. And this one is ultra important. When you're playing aggressively on an opponent, there are a few levels of aggressiveness you want to play to. You have cautious aggressiveness, which is when you tag someone for a little bit of damage to the point where you have the advantage, but they're still healthy enough to confidently fight you. This move is not for that kind of aggressiveness. Then you have the level of aggressiveness that happens when you tag someone for 100+ damage, and they're on white HP. These players will most of the time try their best to build a lot and heal up, but if you give them an opportunity to shoot you, they will take it. This move is not for this level of aggressiveness either. But then lastly, you have when you tag an opponent down to 1 HP, when they're so low that all you need to do is connect a single shot. And that is exactly what this level of aggressiveness is all about. When your opponent is this low, you want to drop down on their wall with your weapon out, shoot a few bullets, but if you see that there is no chance that he will shoot you, you switch to your pickaxe and apply pressure that way. Then your enemy will build more boxes and do the same thing again. You do this as many times as your opponent reboxes. You have awareness, drop down on the wall with your weapon, see if he's going to shoot back or not, and if he's not, you apply pressure with the pickaxe. By doing this, you'll be able to apply tremendous amounts of pressure before having to reload. And it's something every single good player is able to do at a high level. Alright everyone, move 91 will be an extremely important one, and that is pushing early when playing off spawns. A lot of people when playing off spawns waste so much time when it comes to getting ready to fight their opponents. If you get a shotgun and some minis instantly, you have the biggest advantage in the world, as long as you just push without hesitating. There's no point in waiting longer, praying that you get even more lucky and get better loot. Don't let your opponents loot up and farm. Yeah, sure, fighting with low mats can sometimes be super hard, but if you ever want to get to a really good level, you gotta be comfortable with this. And just know that even if you lose once or twice pushing early when you get good loot, it was still objectively speaking a good play. You did the right thing, you just didn't execute it good enough. A play pretty much anyone can execute good enough is double side jumps. Double side jumps are simply done from placing a ramp and a cone, doing a side jump out and landing on a flat and a stair, yet again with a cone above and doing the same side jump again. The good thing about this move is that you gain a lot of elevation very quickly. The bad thing, however, that you need to keep in mind is that you're very easily choppable, meaning you need to try to connect as soon as possible after having executed this one. If you're even more advanced, you can actually do double side jumps whilst sprinting, making them even faster and better. To do these ones, you need to think of your movement in a straight line, as you can't move your mouse back and forth when performing this one. For me, this is unfortunately way too hard to pull off consistently, but for the super mechanically talented players watching, I just wanted to add that in here, due to how cool it looks, and maybe you can even make it effective in real games. Now, a move that is insanely effective and also super easy is doing a bottom 3 Dorito edit. This edit has for some reason been neglected in the past, but in the past few months we've seen more and more players using it due to just how good of an angle it is. The best way I've found to use it in fights is editing it at the same time as you jump. From the opponent's POV, when doing this, you'll be almost unhittable, and worst case scenario, he hits you in the toes and you take a little bit of damage. No big deal. If you're like me and find this edit for some reason less natural to do than other peaks, I highly recommend playing in a focused and dedicated manner practicing it. You should practice this peak so much that it becomes your natural peak to go for when you want to edit the bottom side of a wall. There's no need to do those open 4-square edits when you can literally do the same amount of damage from this one and be way harder to hit. Another move that often makes you a hard target to hit is blueprint editing. Now, blueprint editing, or far editing as it's often called, is when you edit something that can only be reached when holding your blueprint out. Blueprint editing, for example walls, can be really good in box fights and in endgames. And learning how far away you can actually be and not to execute these blueprint edits will come in very handy in the occasions where this can win you a fight or get you a refresh. If you really want to master this skill, you gotta play box fights in creative against good players. Because trust me, by doing that, you'll learn these far edits in the blink of an eye. My 96th tip is one that is super important if you want to make your endgames a lot easier, and that is following tarps. Now, this season, following tarps isn't as easy as previous seasons, due to how there really aren't super long tarps anymore. Because of items like the fizz, people just generally build less boxes. But when there's limited movement, following tarps is such an amazing play to save mats for the later stages of your endgames. It does demand a little bit of self-awareness though. But more often than not, it is totally free to follow a tarp for say 5 boxes. And 5 boxes is 250 mats, saved without any real risk. So if you go into an endgame in an upcoming tournament, just keep this neat little trick in mind. For my 97th move, I really want to give you my first and only completely useless move. This one is embarrassingly hard, but if you execute it in a clip, for example, it will look incredibly cool. The move is often referred to as a flyer jump, because a guy by the name Flyer came up with it years ago. To do it, you want to ramp upwards with a ramp below you and above your head. Then you want to place a cone in front of you, then flip the ramp and do a high jump where you land on a flat and a stair at the same time. I gotta be honest here, this is a move I've never used in a real game, but that might just be because I'm not good enough mechanically. Let me know if you've ever used this in a real game or found any benefit of it in the comments below. Now, a move that is extremely useful to know is being able to take walls from above and editing them quickly as soon as you get them. To take a wall from above an opponent, you want to pickaxe at the very top left of the wall you want to take from them. Then when you go to replace the wall, you hold your crosshair at the same place. And if you've got good ping or your enemy has terrible ping, you'll get the wall. Your follow-up edit can be whatever you'd like. An open edit, a right-hand peek, whatever fits the fight you're currently in. This is by far one of the best ways to apply pressure on walls, and definitely a must-know move when it comes to competitive Fortnite. You can also make taking walls from above even more advanced. To do the more advanced version, you want to place a flat and a stair above a box. Then you want to go ahead and edit the stair into a half stair and edit this one tile right here on the flat. From behind this tile, you can spray the wall and take it. When you go to edit your wall, you actually don't want to blueprint edit. You want to hold your weapon out to make it as easy as possible. Obviously, when going for this move, don't just stand still like I'm doing here. Move around a little bit and make yourself a tiny bit harder to hit. Although from this angle alone, you are a pretty tough target. And move number 100, ladies and gentlemen, will be to reboot your friends from inside of a car in ranked. If you're like me and often get the honor of rebooting your friends when playing a bit of ranked, then this one can come in handy, given that you don't waste any mats and you're also protected from the first shot of your opponents if you have your windshield intact. To do it, the only thing you gotta keep in mind is to be super close to the reboot van, and you also gotta be in one of the passenger seats to make this happen. You cannot do it from the driver's seat. Guys, if you watched all the way until the end of this video, I appreciate you so incredibly much. Again, I do want to give a big shout out to Hone for partnering with me on this video. Check it out either on the Epic Games Store or through their website linked in the description. It's seriously impressive software for better FPS and less input. With that all being said, please go on to have a wonderful day everybody, and I'll see you all very soon.